talking to you, you're telling me that my assault doesn't matter, that what happened to me doesn't matter, and that you're going to let people who do these things into power.
All they really have left now is like the radical feminists, which is less than 1 out of 8 women. They have the Marxist ideologues who actually want to overthrow the government and kill capitalists and then try to create some sort of new, basically Maoist style or Bolshevik style revolution in the US, which is not going to work because we have guns, and that's why they want to get rid of the guns. That's really all they have. So they're catering to this increasingly shrinking and shrieking base of angrier and smaller group.
Hey friends, that was the voice of Dustin Nemos from YouTube. Stay tuned for a gripping interview with Dustin. But the people he describes, those far left Marxists, those are basically the same people running Amazon, Apple, Google, YouTube, Twitter. Do you think that they would have any compunction at all about collecting your data and selling it? That's why you really need a world-class VPN to protect your privacy. And I recommend you try Virtual Shield, which this month is offering 25% off VPN plans on all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, Residential Access, and VIP performance plans for as low as $3 a month. And don't forget IdentiSafe, which allows you the ability to block off your computer, microphone, and camera access from any unwanted spies or hackers. Virtual Shield is not only easy to use, it's one of the fastest VPNs in the world, and it will protect your IP address and data from the prying eyes of Big Brother. And their no-log policy protects users from any data breaches. Get Virtual Shield. You have the right to remain private. I'll provide the link below this video. And friends, it's wonderful to have you back once again, and it's great to have on a new guest, Dustin Nemos. His YouTube channel, Dustin Nemos 2, because his first one was taken away from him by the fascists at YouTube because he had the audacity to be reporting on the Parkland shooting in Florida, and when they wanted to grab our guns, Dustin wondered why. Wanted to dig deeper, and of course, Big Brother over at YouTube doesn't like that. Dustin, welcome.
Thank you, brother. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for reaching out. And, in our little pre-call chat here, I was mentioning other YouTubers who I admire, newcomers who weren't around 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. When I started back in 2011, there were precious few of us in the truth media. Now it's burgeoning. People like Praying Medic, McAllister TV, Just Informed Talk, Space Shot 76, Tracy Beans, Lori Colley, so many more. Folks, I post a lot of your stuff over at The Phaser, so if I didn't mention you, my apologies. I'm watching your stuff too. And I'm just so buoyed by the fact that there's so many of us now, Justin, speaking truth and uncovering the fascist mockingbird lies. It's really awesome.
It really is. And, I commend you for being around in those times. Back then, it was kind of like the darkness period, and I just had given up, and I was a nihilist, When Trump got in, I kind of woke up again. And then when Q came out, it was like, okay, this is it. I've got to be active.
So you were activated, your liberty senses and your red-blooded drive for liberty was sparked by Trump beating the witch?
Yeah, spidey senses went off. Like I was trying to just get out of the country and try to find freedom for myself to escape what I knew was coming. But then I was like, you know what? This is where we have to make our stand. And I'm sure a lot of those other YouTubers out there feel the same.
Well, I think so. I think that people were ready to throw in the towel on the Republic if the witch got in, because many of us who have been in the process of waking up know that we've been lied to. For me, the big wake-up call was learning about World Trade Center 7 and the BBC reporting about its collapse 20 minutes early. And the whole official story of 9/11 collapsing at free fall speed as my paradigm shattered, and I realized we were being lied to by the right and the left. But today it seems like the left, the hardcore left, which has inspired the walk away movement, are truly the enemies of this country, along with the Mockingbird media.
Well, they're just communists. Most of them even know that they're communists at this point, and they just have a playbook to follow, and they go by the Saul Alinsky rules for radicals, and they have the definite, firm vision of what they want, and that is to break down the society so they can rebuild it as a communist hellhole.
Yeah, no, that's right. And, people that are waking up to all of this realize that this is George Soros' New World Order globalist talking points that the hardcore left is now emulating. They want open borders. They want abortion on demand. They want unlimited immigration, and they want to take our guns. Essentially, by very definition of what their playbook is, it would spell the end of our nation. It would spell the end of the Bill of Rights. It would spell the end of our constitutional republic.
I mean, Communism is sort of like a weaponized ideology. It's almost as if it was designed to break down nations. You break down the culture, you break down the cohesiveness. When you break down the culture, you break down the economy. You break down everything. You even break down the interpersonal divide and conquer stuff, like the man versus woman, the gay versus straight, the black versus white. All of these things that they do. It's just that the whole Marxism ideology was just a weapon to wedge people apart.
I want to talk to you about Q. I want to talk to you about Kavanaugh. I want to talk to you about Red October, but I want to read you an email here first as we bridge over to Q. I received this one day ago from somebody who I've interviewed once, and I interviewed this person quite a while ago now. I won't tell you guys his name, but he wrote this to me out of the blue. I thought it was pretty shocking. He said, Sean, last time I checked, today 1 in 34 kids who got vaccinated got autism. We were sprayed like bugs with geoengineering. Monsanto took over 80% of our farms and feeding us poison food. 5G was fast-tracked and UN Agenda 2030 is being implemented. Our water is poison. The fish from the Pacific is poison. And you want to play politics favoring the RNC who voted in TPP. WTF, buddy. Until the above is stopped, Q is nothing more than a distraction. And then he signed his name. And I thought, what a strange email to send somebody who has only been reporting about all of those things for the past 5, 6, 7 years. And now, additionally, I will report the good news about Q and the white hats trying to topple the clear enemies and traitors of this nation, led by Hillary Clinton, the FBI, and the CIA. What is so damn wrong about talking about Q, Dustin?
You know, I get that sometimes as well. People who have the idea that if their issue is not being addressed in the time frame that they want it done, then nothing is being done. And that, you know, if I had a beef with Trump, it would be that he's not working on the vaccine issue fast enough. But, you know, we have to remember that Obama's holdover government is still in place. If you look at the recent Project Veritas videos, they're busting these socialist Democrat basically undercover operatives within our government trying to delay and derail the Trump agenda in any way that they can, and basically proud of it because they are subversives. They are the communist infiltrators of our government, especially when you go back and look at the Fabian socialists and how they took the stealth approach to kind of take over governments from within. And they play a long game. But, you know, things are being done. We are getting, you know, one at a time. You know, Trump is not a god. He can only do so much. So we're going to deal with the pedophile elite. We're going to deal with the corruption. We're going to get those guys out of the way. And then we can deal with all these other issues probably very quickly, like 5G, vaccines, everything.
Yeah, it just makes my blood boil when somebody has the hubris to send another truther an email like that. Because, look, 1 in 34 kids who get vaccinated got autism. I have a vaccine-damaged child. I've talked about that. And I've been in the process of trying to line up an interview with Carrie Rivera. Her website, folks, is cdautism.org, and she works with chlorine dioxide to make substantive changes to help these kids. Trying to line up an interview there. I've talked to Grindall 61 about Agenda 21 and 2030. Same with Deborah Tavares. I'm very worried about that, and we talk about it. About 5G, we talk about directed energy weapons being used in California to stoke these fires. We talk about all this stuff. But at the end of the day, Dustin, something you and I and all of those others I mentioned at the opening of the call, Praying Medic, McAllister, Just Informed Talk, Space Shot, we all have this thing in common, and it's the good news of Q, which is that the witch is no longer in control and the bad guys are now running for their lives. So let's talk about that. What do you think is the single best piece of news or information that Q has disseminated over the past month even?
First thing that comes to mind is the clear-cut plan that he is just basically laying out blatantly. Like, he's usually more subtle. He's gotten more and more obvious about things. More lately, it's just, here's the plan. Here's what's going to happen. Kavanaugh, FISA declassification, and then we're going to start the criminal investigations of the bad guys, like the ones who signed the FISA thing in the first place. And those are already going on. The grand jury investigations are already going on. We know McCabe is. The others will be under investigation as well. It's just not really come out yet. Every signer, and then that's going to lead to Obama and Hillary and everything else. And, you know, I bet you that some of those people are just trying to spread FUD, you know, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's kind of a crypto term. But on the other hand, for those who sincerely believe that nothing is being done about those issues, I would just say, that if you had to lay out a timeline of what would happen, and you went from corruption to all of those things are addressed, and in the middle, you would have to figure out what's the stepping stone to get there. You would clearly lay out getting rid of the corruption first before you could go from corruption to not utopia, but a better world. So we're in that we're in that second phase now. We're going from corruption to clearing the corruption, and then we can go to addressing all of those issues when the government actually listens to President Trump.
Right. Well, I think the thing that needs to be said time and time again for those that are in the process of waking up or even getting to understand Q and understand the deep state and the bad guys is that all of this stuff, the enemies of our freedom, can be tracked back to the intelligence agencies that were all set up by the bankers, the Dulles brothers, et cetera. And you've got the Royal Crown and the MI6 and the MI5 all working together to try to topple Trump, the Christopher Steele connection. But one thing that needs to be remembered is that when you talk about Trump dethroning essentially the Clintons, the Clinton-Bush connection is the deep state. You know, it was Bush Sr., who I believe had ties to the assassination of JFK, who became president after being the director of the CIA. They create the Clintons with their Mena, Arkansas drug running. So then Bill gets to be president. And then his son becomes president. Then they create Obama, I believe a CIA creation. We don't, first thing he did was seal all of his records upon becoming president. We don't know who this guy really is. I mean, we figured it out, Barry Soetoro, but he's a CIA creation. And then they were going to seal the deal and pound the final nail in our coffin with Hillary Clinton. And Q has said it would have been hell on earth and that these people are pure evil. And he's absolutely right. I don't know who Q is specifically. And we've heard that when you people find out who Q is, you're going to be shocked who it is you've been talking to. But that's the bottom line, right? We now know, anybody who is thinking knows what the deep state is. And the deep state is aligned against the people of this country and the republic and the sovereignty of our nation and the Constitution. And they are aligned with the globalists, the Rothschilds, the New World Order plan, George Soros.
Yeah. And it all really, if you boil it down to the fundamentals, this all goes back to the belief that statism or government itself is some sort of good thing, or maybe even a necessary evil or anything like that. Like, I'm a voluntarist. My position is that any power will be abused, obviously. So when you create a position of power, inevitably, it will be abused. You may even get lucky for a while. You may get the best form of government, which is a benevolent monarchy, like a good king. But if his son is a bad guy, then you're immediately in a bad situation. So that's kind of why the founding fathers spread out the power and set checks and balances and decentralize as much as they could. I'm all about the decentralization. I want to take the power back from these guys with things like cryptocurrencies or silver. If we want to take the power of the money printing away from them, we just get as much silver as we can. It's almost out anyway, and as soon as it runs out, the whole system goes down because they won't be able to suppress the prices or anything else anymore. So there's a lot of realistic strategies people can employ in their day-to-day lives to kind of fight back against the machine and their control over the money system, which is the root basis. They say that for every one person hacking at the roots of evil, there's 1,000 people hacking at the branches. I want to be one of those people that hacks at the roots, and I want to tell other people about how to do that.
Yeah, me too. And I think that what we should do right now is let's turn our attention back to Q. There's a new Q post out here on October 3rd. And at the very top of the post is Q linking to Kevin Shipp's Twitter. So I'm going to read this to you guys. Kevin Shipp tweeted out on October 2nd, Ford, referring to Christine Ford, is not just a liar, she is a puppet. As a former CIA polygraph examiner with a master's degree in forensic psychophysiology, I can tell you with certainty she has been coached to lie. Also, note her breathing during the questions. All right, so that's at the top of Q's post. Then Q links to a Fox News headline, a news item here. Christine Blasey Ford, ex-boyfriend, says she helped friend prep for potential polygraph. Grassley sounds alarm. And now I'll read Q. Ford herself, coached by the CIA, farm, pre-family invite with internship assignment, Stanford, CIA-assisted sex assault sleepers who are targeted based on trusted family backgrounds, geopolitical location relative to families of power, influence, ability to harvest, control, etc., fantasy or reality. Normal to self-induced in stages to exhibit past trauma level events with friendly therapy sessions notated as undefined, past trauma exerted to ident mind with feelings with target insertion. Is that Kavanaugh? Were these recalled memories? Were they created memories, Dustin? It's a question we've all been asking. She can't remember how she got to the party. She can't remember where the party was. She can't remember how she got home from the party, but somehow she remembers Brett Kavanaugh specifically. And yet the story keeps changing. So we'll continue here. Polygraph administered by former FBI agent. Who was the agent? Background? Mueller era? How many times was the test administered before results were satisfactory? Were questions modified to create positive result? Goal? Per pass statistical success rates? Apply enough false, intensive, private, and public pressure for nominee to resign? Thank God he said he would not. He would not be forced to resign. He would not be forced to withdraw his name. Mission failed. Target provided with info to prep counter. The more you know, Q. The bottom line here, my takeaway on all of this, Dustin, is that this whole Me Too thing has been weaponized, right? They've weaponized Me Too to try to take away political power from those who have better ideas. And the only thing they need to do now is accuse you or any of us of sexual assault. And suddenly your whole life is destroyed. It's absurd. These people don't even want due process. Your thoughts on her potential ties to the CIA?
You know, there's a lot of rumors floating around about that. My first instinct would be, yeah, of course, it's kind of obvious. Of course, I haven't sourced that yet, but Q basically seems to be confirming that she was recruited by the CIA. And, a couple things that stand out to me from this. One, her body language was incredibly guilty. Two, she contradicted herself with this whole comment. They actually questioned her if she's ever talked about this kind of thing before, and she said no. And then it came out later her boyfriend is saying that yeah, she did. So she's basically now caught in perjury to Congress, and that's going to be a big deal. I actually suspect maybe that she's going to get some criminal. Maybe not her. I don't know, because they'll play it as a victim thing. But some of these, we already know they're referring for criminal investigation for the slander, and this whole Me Too thing, this whole back to Florida, the whole victim status thing that they try to push to then play on our emotions because we're good people and they're psychopaths, and that's what they do. They're trying to play on these emotions so that they can build up this emotional sympathy to then use that as a weapon against people. But so many people are now aware of their games that what they've done is actually blown up in their face. They've actually made Kavanaugh the victim. Kavanaugh is getting all the support. Like, they're people that were not even caring that much are now like pissed off and supporting the Republicans even harder because of what just happened to Kavanaugh. Like, they don't want to see this. There are women out there who've got friends or family or dads or something who have been accused falsely. There's women that are getting in trouble for this all the time. I saw a story recently where a couple girls in a cab were not allowed to smoke. So they basically accused the guy of sexual assault because he wouldn't let them smoke in his cab. I mean, just things like that all the time. There are people out there that abuse the system. They know that they can get away with things if they're the victim. So then they abuse that and they exploit that. And they create real victims by doing that. So, my heart goes out to actual victims. But those who pretend to be victims to victimize others, man, that just disgusts me on such a deep level. I'm so glad that I am married and I don't have to play the dating game anymore, because I would be afraid. I would go MGTOW because I'd be afraid to try to date in this kind of culture.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, the culture has changed since I was in college, because there were no safe spaces in college. There were places for debate. And that's where I learned a lot of critical thinking skills, is in college. And they don't want people to use their critical thinking skills anymore. They want people to be polarized and stuck in camps, indoctrinated with their beliefs. And I guess if one of your core beliefs that you cling to as being the most important thing in the world is, quote unquote, women's rights, which essentially is the right to abortion, then it's going to be very hard for two polarized camps, those on the pro-life side and those on the pro-abortion side, to ever meet in the middle. But that's what the rulers want. They want to keep us divided with these big walls that can't be bridged. We can never meet in the middle on that particular topic. And yet there are so many other really more important topics that need to be discussed if we want to continue to have a country. I think what's shocking, though, is that on the far, far left, many of these people are so far gone that even those on the left are walking away. Like, if you're not far left, you're no longer a Democrat. If you're not far Soros left, you're walking away in droves. And I think that's the good news, is people are fed up with what they're seeing. You know, I've seen so many people say, hey, look, I'm not a bigot if I don't want open borders and I want a lawful immigration system. That doesn't make me a bigot. I've seen videos of women on the left who have made these walk away videos. And that's the good news. People are truly starting to use critical thinking. And when they do that, they walk away.
I would say that not everyone is necessarily even capable of critical thinking, or at least they don't choose to engage that part of their brain. A lot of them are just led by their emotions. But the Republican side, you know, I'm a voluntarist. I'm not a Republican, but I'm in the same camp. I'm on the Trump team because of obviously good versus evil at this point. But the Republican side has taken so many blows. They've taken so many insults and arrows and spears, metaphorically speaking, that they have become the victim. And even those people on the left who are more emotionally driven are now starting to see, look, these guys are jerks. They're mean. They're bullies. They're evil, possibly. And they're leaving. So all they really have left now is like the radical feminists, which is less than 1 out of 8 women. They have the Marxist ideologues who actually want to overthrow the government and kill capitalists and then try to create some sort of new, basically Maoist style or possibly Bolshevik style revolution in the US, which is not going to work because we have guns, and that's why they want to get rid of the guns. And then that's really all they have. So they're catering to this increasingly shrinking and shrieking base of angrier and angrier and smaller group. And that's why you see all of these just emotional lash outs, people screaming in the streets, you know, these temper tantrums from adults who should know better. And that's why you see people like with Flake in the elevator, if you saw that video.
Yeah, I reported on that. And one of those gals is tied to a Soros-funded organization, the Democracy Vote or something like that.
Yeah, and then right after they posed and they smiled and they took pictures because they were proud of what they did. And they basically did this emotional hit job. I'm the victim, you don't get to say. And then they were happy about it afterwards because they were faking it to get the attention, to try to weaponize that emotion against them. And that weaponized emotion is really something that people have to understand. It's called appeal to emotion. It's a logical fallacy. When you, like you said, you went through debate, and I completely learned debate on Facebook, talking about these different political and philosophical and different kind of positions. But I was intrigued by the logical fallacies, because when you teach somebody what that is, they can spot it. It never works on them again. An appeal to emotion is where they use emotion and manipulate you to try to change your opinion on something or shut down a conversation. And that's exactly what they're doing. And we have all learned about it now, at least enough of us, that it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you saw this, but prior to Kavanaugh's testimony or Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, CNN did a 5-woman panel about Kavanaugh, and all of the women supported him. And CNN, I think, must have been astounded by that outcome. So even before the testimony, and now, the man speaks, Kavanaugh, in his opening statement, which was close to a half hour long or longer, spoke with righteous indignation and outrage, because he sounded exactly like you'd want somebody to sound who was falsely accused. It's exactly what I would have done. I mean, my anger would have come through, I think, quite strongly in my words, as I know in my recall of my life that I've never sexually assaulted anybody, including this woman who is bearing false witness against me. I mean, that sort of righteous indignation is what you would expect to hear from an innocent man. And now, of course, the left is trying to troll him and take him to task for that. And meanwhile, we now know that Christine Ford appears to have been lying about polygraph coaching, that she evidently, according to a close personal friend or somebody who used to date her, her best friend, Monica McLean, who was trying to get a job at the FBI, this man says he saw Christine Blasey Ford coach Monica about how to pass a polygraph test. And then we now know she was lying about the 2 front doors. And she needed a second front door because she felt unsafe her whole life. But we find out that was part of a huge remodel job so that they could have a separate entrance to a house, a big addition they did, so they could charge new renters to stay in the home, and they make money that way. So she is a bold-faced liar. And now we see creepy porn lawyer Michael Avenatti, his latest client, Julie Swetnick. Have you seen this? Are you familiar with Julie Swetnick? Get this.
Yeah, she had been sued
So
before.
yeah, sued before for evidently making some false claims about sexual assault, I believe, in the workplace. And then a former short-term boyfriend of hers says that she was into group sex, and he ended the relationship when she made that abundantly clear to him that that's what she was into. And now we have Avenatti reaching out to Mike Davis, chief counsel for nominations at the U.S. Senate Committee on the Judiciary. And Avenatti says, on the subject of Julie Swetnick, Mr. Davis, stop playing games. If you are the chief counsel, then you need to do your job. Please respond to our requests. And the reply he received from Davis said this: Mr. Avenatti, we have already reviewed your client's allegations. We focus on credible allegations. Please stop emailing me. Please
Yeah.
stop emailing me. Thank you, Mike Davis. It's just priceless. Your thoughts on Julie or any of that?
I mean, that one's a non-starter. All they're doing is just trying to throw as many. They're going to Roy Moore Kavanaugh if they can. They're going to just come out with as many as they can, all false, and they're going to pretend that each validates the other. And it's just where there's smoke, there's got to be fire, and that's a strategy that they do. And plus, you notice that they've kind of shifted now from attacking him on the sexual assault to more attacking him on his reaction to it. And that's one of those rules for radicals from Saul Alinsky, you know. Just keep pushing, keep the pressure on until they react, and then accuse them, use the reaction against them. So now the fact that he was righteously indignant, and justly so, they're going to use that and saying he was emotionally unstable, he's partisan, he obviously is the kind of personality that would be a rapist because look how he lost control and all of this other stuff. So they've always got something ready to go. The rules for radicals, man, it's their playbook. And if you learn it, it no longer works.
Yeah, you're right. And just to stay over the target here with Julie Swetnick's claims, this is a tweet from U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, who tweeted on October 2nd, a criminal referral should be sent to the FBI DOJ regarding the apparently false affidavit signed by Julie Swetnick that was submitted to the Senate by Michael Avenatti. I don't think these people realize that they're in the big game. These people coming forward, bearing false witness and making false allegations to try to end this man's career and destroy his life, I don't think they realize that there is a movement out there of white hats that would love to see these people imprisoned, because they should know, and I can't believe they don't, they should know that the penalty for perjury is up to 5 years in prison. It's no laughing matter.
I agree completely. It's basically, at this point, I think they're actually starting to refer some of these for criminal investigation. They're even looking into Feinstein, and now she's getting really nervous about stuff too. So that is a wonderful sign. She's pretty high up the chain. Above her comes like Hillary and Obama and stuff. So they've done their games. They've pushed. They've now overstepped. They've overextended, and now is the time for the good guys to strike back, because we have the emotional support. We have the people support in terms of Kavanaugh being the actual victim of this, and I think it's time. I think that they're going to start seeing this. They're going to probably make an example of some of them. Feinstein is going to probably get some kind of slap on the wrist, but it's going to be a start. And then when the FISA gets declassified, because Kavanaugh is obviously going to be in, then it's going to start the whole avalanche 5D thing. It's going to start the snowball rolling.
Yeah, you mentioned Feinstein being investigated. So Senator Tom Cotton says Feinstein will be investigated over leaked letter by Kavanaugh accuser. That's 2 days ago from Fox News. Then yesterday, Feinstein attacks Cotton's ridiculous claim she'll be investigated. And this one from McClatchy. Who would investigate Feinstein's handling of Ford letter? Here's the thing. Going back to that second one, Feinstein attacks Cotton's ridiculous claim she'll be investigated. These people are no longer above the law. What are they not getting? I think that's why Lindsey Graham is now whistling a different tune. He and McCain used to be best buddies, and they used to attack Trump, and they were sort of pro-Clinton on the side of the deep state. I made videos about it. I disliked Lindsey Graham as much as I disliked McCain. But now it seems like he switched sides. It's like somebody got to him and said, look, here's what's going down, and you can either get on the right side or you can go to a military tribunal, your call. He seems to absolutely be in the president's camp now. And what Feinstein doesn't understand is that the witch is not in the White House. So the deck is no longer stacked. Feinstein absolutely could be investigated. So I don't think it's ridiculous at all, but that's what she's arguing.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I think that we can finally start to move into getting some justice, especially when Kavanaugh is actually in, because then we have a majority on the high court. But I will say that, as far as Graham goes, we're starting to see people switching over to Team Trump. in times of change and danger, like the patriot is a scarce man and all of that. So any of these guys that are switching now, it's probably self-preservation. I don't trust them at all. Maybe the people who are around and pushing earlier on, but if they're going to do good, great. If the good team has control of them, great. But I will never forget where they were when we needed them earlier on, and they weren't there. So for what it's worth, that's just my opinion on them.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm sure that you saw the exchange between Lindsey Graham and Brett Kavanaugh in the hearings in which they were talking about military tribunals and the difference between civilian court and military court. And the point was made that military tribunals, military court, is the place, or can be one of the places, for a traitor to be tried for his crimes. That's essentially what the conversation was about. Your thoughts on military tribunals? Do you think any have happened that we don't know about, or do you think that there are military tribunals to come?
It is kind of funny that Kasich had said McCain was put to death by accident on CNN.
It's like 24 hours since John McCain was put to death. And look at...
Yeah, I saw that. And, I almost made a video about that. And then I really thought, you know what, it's far more likely that what he meant to say was put to rest. And he misspoke, but nobody corrected him. The host didn't correct him. So it is sort of a strange one. I agree.
It's a weird situation all around. So I'm not going to take a firm position on that one. I will say that, Lindsey Graham changed his tune quickly. They spent 2 minutes hammering that whole point about the difference between civil court and military court and military tribunals. Kavanaugh confirmed that there is precedent. The Supreme Court would back it. Q has told us now that the Supreme Court has basically given Sessions the permission to unrecuse. So he's written the letter. He's got the answer. He's ready to go. All of this is going to hit right after probably the day Kavanaugh is confirmed. I mean, knowing how they're doing this, they're just really kind of just ramping it up and going as fast as they can. So within a day or two of Kavanaugh being, in the position firmly, they're going to start the FISA declassification. And, as a voluntarist, I don't really support the idea of taking away people's rights, and then putting a special, special caveats into their rights. Like you have a citizen's rights unless you do this, this, and this, all the Patriot Act stuff. But I will say that, all of these things that they set up to screw we the people over and to take away our rights and to take away our freedoms, now being used against them, it has a karmic justice to it. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And hopefully we can just use it and then get rid of it. That's probably a little idealistic, but at least we have, at the top of the government, we have a good guy in there right now. And that goes back to the good king, bad king thing. Like, these powers are so extensive. The NSA, the military tribunals that, if they stay in existence, they will get abused again down the road. But right now, Trump is there, and I support it because, he's doing the right thing. He's lost a quarter of his wealth. And that's an old number from Julian Assange, just in the time that he's been president, trying to fight for this. I mean, people think he's making money out of this and stuff, and he's not. He's sacrificing his golden years, and he's sacrificing his fortune to help us fight for freedom. And that is, he's rolling back the clock on regulations and taxation and stuff. And there's a lot more to do. He's starting to freeze government pay increases and things like that. And that's a big deal too, because that shows a sign that he understands the problem is this huge government. So I'm really optimistic about maybe just kind of shrinking the government back down to something where we have a semblance of capitalism and freedom again, and getting away from all of this collectivism and socialism and communism and fascism, just collectivist authoritarian ideologies.
Well, I think there is a red wave sweeping not only this country, but the globe, because we see it happening in the EU, right? We see much of the same movement that we're seeing in the United States happen in the EU, as many of those countries in the EU want to break away from the unelected bureaucrats in Brussels ruling them and making all of their political decisions for them. They all may want to share in the same currency, perhaps, but they don't want to share in the same policies. So we see this sort of rebellion, as exemplified by Brexit, for instance, happening all over the nation, all over the world, and that's what has the globalists petrified, Dustin, because they're not going to get their new world order, one world government if all of this apparatus they put in place so far, that they put in place in the EU, and that they wanted to finally put in place here under Hillary Clinton, if that all falls apart, it's much, much harder. It's really, they have to start over with their New World Order vision. And I think that's the best possible news we can share with people in this broadcast, is that what we see, this red wave sweeping this country, we also see in the EU, don't we?
Yeah, and I will add that I like to reduce things down to the simplest way that I can think of for everyone to really understand. And as I see it, the divide and conquer Marxist stuff that they've been doing, and not just Marxist, but the elite have always done divide and conquer with the people, that kind of thing that they've been doing is starting to not work as well. We're kind of growing immune to it because we're learning how it works. And when you look beyond the curtain just a little bit, you start to see that it's not man versus woman or black versus white. It's actually the very, very less than 1% of people versus the rest of us, like the super wealthy and their control parasite mindset of not actually contributing anything productive, using, cheating and money rigging and wars and things like that to maintain control. And then the divide and conquer stuff. Of course, that's where all the pedophilia and occultism stuff is going to. That little tiny group versus everyone else. And that's really what it's coming down to. And that's kind of where you see that, like Brexit, for example, it's the people largely. I mean, there's a little minority that doesn't want it, but it's the people versus these elite unelected bureaucrats in Brussels that are trying to stop them from getting what they want, which is just, I want to be over here away from you guys. I don't want to be forced to associate with you. This is a bad deal for me. I want to go do my own thing and I want to be free. And these guys are basically saying, you can't do that. You're going to have this, and this. We're going to punish you. They're talking about making an EU army to threaten these countries that want to leave and pull out. And the whole system is about to collapse anyway. So these countries are going to go back to being nationalist. Of course, the people want their own culture. They want to be left alone. They just want to live their lives and not be invaded by an army of uncompatible cultures of, these military age radical Islamicists in many cases. Sweden has become the rape capital of the world, for example. I mean, it's so many things that are being shoved on them where they don't want it, and it's sort of akin to rape in a sense, like an economic sort of rape and a cultural sort of rape. And people are really starting to wake up and resist that. And it's a beautiful thing to see, and it's only a matter of time until that pressure overcomes those small people, that small group of dominant powers.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head. And for anybody that wants to dig a little deeper into the plot of multiculturalism, the plot against all of us with this open borders, open migration, endless migration agenda, I want you to go over to No More News and watch the Mass Migration Agenda. Guys, that was a video he posted on October 3rd. The Mass Migration Agenda. Just watch it and know what the plot is. And it is very much a plot, a plan to destroy nation states, to destroy Christianity, to destroy Islam, and to leave one religion at the top. Just watch it, guys. The Mass Migration Agenda. It explains a lot of what's going on and the resistance that is now being applied against it. Dustin, hey man, I really appreciate your time. How many YouTube subscribers do you have right now? Let's see if we can't pick up a good 5,000 subscribers here. What are you at right now?
That would be very cool. My first channel was at 43, and then this one is at 54 and a half. So that's pretty cool.
Okay, well, 54,500 or so. Guys, head over to Dustin Nemos 2 on YouTube and subscribe. And Dustin, I know you've taken heat, from trolls in the community, and we hadn't previously met, but you reached out to me, and I appreciate that. And it's always nice to make a new friend in the truth space. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course. And honestly, it was just favorite thing about this whole line of work is I get to meet some of the people I really look up to. And I've been watching your work for a long time, and you put out a lot of great information. So it was really exciting for me.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. And it's very nice of you to say. And guys, I appreciate all of you for taking the time to tune in and listen to conversations like these. And maybe we can wake up some more people. I think people are waking up on their own at this point because it's so clear who our enemies are. And the bottom line, Dustin, is I just thank God every day that the witch is not sitting in the Oval Office. And it truly would have been hell on earth.
We dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, we did. All right, Dustin, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, brother.
All right. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate your support. For real news 24/7, do visit us at SGTreport.com. Also, check out thephaser.com, where I hand select videos that you may otherwise miss, featuring people like Dustin, Praying Medic, McAllister TV, Just Informed Talk, Space Shot 76, Tracy Beans, Lori Colley, and so many more. Our friends over at True Stream Media, Adam Green, Red Ice. So many great truthers out there, guys. So visit us at thephaser.com. And last but not least, check us out at thelibertymill.com for real news 24/7. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. God bless.
How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know. I don't know.